If you don't want to move into a nursing home, then pack your things and get out of my house. Those were the words my son shouted while looking straight into my eyes. I stayed silent, only managing a faint smile. I folded my clothes carefully, tucked away the old photographs, and closed my suitcase. An hour later, a black limousine stopped in front of the house. When my son opened the door and saw who had come to pick me up, the smile vanished from his face. It was as if the ground had fallen from under his feet. My name is Walter Thompson, and I'm 68 years old. You know that feeling when you look at the child you once held, once taught to ride a bike, once showed how to change oil in a car, and realize you no longer recognize the person standing before you? That's exactly what I felt when my son Andrew threw me out of the house. No, to be precise, out of my own house. That house was built with the money I saved over 45 years working at the Ford plant in Dearborn. Every overtime shift paid for a brick in that foundation. Every double shift bought another board for the frame I built with my own hands. But that Sunday afternoon in March, none of that mattered anymore. I was cleaning my tools in the garage as always because, according to Stephanie, my daughter-in-law, I was better suited for manual work than being in her living room. The front of my flannel shirt was dirty with grease, my calloused hands steady as I organized my wrench set. Andrew walked in, wearing that same frown I'd seen since he was little, and got scolded by his mother. But my wife Linda had been gone for 14 years now, and the 42-year-old man standing before me was no longer that boy. "Dad, we need to talk." I set down my socket wrench and turned around, giving a tired nod. "What is it, son?" Stephanie stepped in behind him. Red nails, perfectly styled hair, dark lipstick. She crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe like someone waiting for a show to start. I'd seen that look before. It never meant anything good. "We've decided," Andrew said, avoiding my eyes. "This house feels a bit cramped. The kids need more space, and you're getting older. Maybe it's time you found a place that fits you better." My heart thudded hard. I knew what was coming. After 3 years of living here, 3 years of being treated like hired help, I knew exactly where this conversation was heading. "A place that fits me better," I repeated slowly. "You mean a nursing home?" "Dad, there are some really nice ones nearby. They have activities, people your age, nurses to take care of you. It would be good for you." "A nursing home?" I cut him off. The words shot out like a wrench hitting concrete. "You're trying to send me to a nursing home." The silence in the garage grew heavy. Stephanie pretended to check her phone, but I could see that smirk she was trying to hide. Finally, Andrew looked at me. In his eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before. Coldness. "Not a nursing home, Dad. An upscale assisted living community. There's a difference. The only difference," I said evenly, "is that you're trying to get rid of me." My voice didn't shake. I wouldn't let them see that. Not after everything I'd swallowed over the past 3 years. Andrew's face flushed red. "Then go. If you don't want to move into a nursing home, pack your bags and leave my house." His yell echoed through the garage, bounced off the walls I had painted, through the workshop where I taught him to use tools, and up into the house I had wired and plumbed myself. Every fixture, every outlet, every pipe in that place had been touched by these hands. Stephanie tried to hide her satisfaction behind her hand, but I saw it. That little smile of triumph. That was the moment something inside me broke, not my heart. That had cracked long ago when Linda passed. It was the final bolt that connected me to the illusion that I still had a family. You see, I'd been fooling myself for 3 years, telling myself that family meant something, that the man who used to sit on my shoulders at Tigers games still existed somewhere inside this stranger. But right then, looking at his cold eyes and her satisfied smirk, I finally understood the truth. I took a deep breath, looked at the son I no longer recognized, and did the last thing he expected. I smiled. "All right, Andrew, I'll pack my things." His face shifted, confusion mixed with fear. He had expected anger, pleading, maybe some begging. But no, there was only a chilling calm. See, here's the thing about working 45 years in a factory. You learn that when a machine breaks down, you don't waste time crying about it. You fix it or you replace it. I walked upstairs to the small room at the back of the house where I slept, a space so tiny it looked like a storage closet. I took out my old duffel bag, the same one I'd brought with me 3 years ago when I moved in after selling my house. I folded my clothes neatly, every shirt, every pair of work pants, every jacket I'd worn to the plant. I took out a small wooden box filled with photographs. Linda and me on our wedding day. Andrew as a baby in my arms. My father standing next to the first car we restored together. I didn't shed a single tear. Not yet. An hour later, I carried the duffel bag downstairs. Andrew sat on the couch I had helped him buy when he first got married 10 years ago. Stephanie beside him with that triumphant expression she wore whenever she got her way. When the doorbell rang, Andrew got up with an annoyed sigh and opened the door. The look on his face I will never forget. A sleek black limousine waited outside. The driver, wearing a crisp suit, opened the back door, and out stepped a man in his early 70s. Silver hair neatly combed, dressed in a deep navy suit. It was Henry Wellington, Linda's former business partner and the owner of Wellington Construction, one of the most successful contractors in southeastern Michigan. And he had come for me. Andrew froze, mouth hanging open like he was trying to catch flies. Stephanie turned pale as yesterday's newspaper. You should have seen them. All that smugness just drained right out of their faces. Henry walked in, heading straight toward me as if my son didn't exist. Now, here's something you need to understand about Henry Wellington. This man built half the shopping centers between Detroit and Ann Arbor. When he walks into a room, people notice. "Walter," he said warmly, smiling like we were old fishing buddies. "Are you ready?" I picked up my duffel bag and gave Andrew one last look. "Thank you for everything, Andrew. The house is all yours now." I stepped outside. The smile on his face vanished completely. Through the limousine's rear window, I saw him still standing motionless on the porch, watching his father leave in more style than he'd probably ever see in his lifetime. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Freedom. Inside that limo, the faint scent of genuine leather and expensive cologne filled the air. Henry sat beside me, keeping a respectful distance as the car glided down the main street. I held tightly to the duffel bag handle, as if it were the only real thing left. My hands didn't shake, not from fear, but from a strange mix of relief and disbelief. "Walter, are you all right?" Henry asked softly. I wanted to say, "I'm fine," to pretend I was in control, but what came out was a weary sigh. "I don't even know how I feel, Henry. It's all too new." He nodded without speaking. We sat quietly watching Dearborn drift by. Cars, strip malls, pedestrians heading home from work. The world moving on as if my life hadn't just been turned upside down. When we reached his property, a beautiful log home on the shores of Lake Huron, about an hour north of the city, I needed Henry's arm to help me step out. Not because I was weak, but because I was overwhelmed. The security gate opened automatically. He nodded to the groundskeeper while I remained invisible to everyone. Just a man beside him. The reflection in the car window showed a 68-year-old man in a simple flannel shirt, gray hair still thick but receding, eyes tired from holding back years of disappointment, calloused hands that had built things, fixed things, created things. But right then, I felt like I'd forgotten how to do any of that. "You still look strong, Walter," Henry said gently, as if reading my thoughts. "You always have." I wanted to laugh, to tell him he must be seeing things, but the sincerity in his eyes silenced me. Here was a man worth millions, telling a retired factory worker he looked strong. Sometimes life surprises you in ways you never expect. His home was impressive, but not flashy. Natural wood beams, stone fireplace, large windows overlooking the lake. When we walked in, I stopped and just took it in. Hardwood floors, high ceilings, sunlight flooding through picture windows. The decor was comfortable, yet refined, masculine without being cold. "Your room is upstairs," Henry said, carrying my duffel bag. "You have your own bathroom, and there's a full workshop in the basement with every tool you could want. Consider this your home now. My home now." Those words echoed in my head as I climbed the polished wooden stairs. The bedroom was 3 times the size of the one I'd had at Andrew's. A king-size bed covered in crisp blue sheets. Golden sunlight filtered through quality blinds. The air smelled fresh, like a new beginning was actually possible. I sat on the edge of the bed, and the exhaustion finally hit me. Not tears, but fatigue. The kind that comes from years of pent-up frustration finally being released. Like when you've been holding your breath underwater and finally surface. I didn't know how long I sat there. When I looked up, The lake was reflecting the evening light like a mirror. My phone started buzzing. Andrew calling. I let it ring until it stopped. Then again. I declined. Notifications flooded in like water through a broken dam. 47 missed calls, 23 messages? I opened them. Dad, where are you? Please answer. Who was that man? Can we talk? Dad, I'm worried. I chuckled quietly. Worried about me? After throwing me out of my own garage like a broken tool he didn't need anymore. The nerve of that kid. I turned off the phone and set it on the nightstand. Some conversations can wait. Some can wait forever. A soft knock came at the door. Walter, I made some coffee, Henry said, walking in with a silver tray, a pot, 2 mugs, and a few homemade cookies. He sat by the window, pouring coffee without saying a word. The scent of dark roast filled the room, my favorite blend. How did you know? I asked. Linda told me, he said gently. She said you always drank it black after dinner. The mention of Linda made my chest ache. Linda Wellington, the woman I loved more than life itself, who had died of cancer 14 years ago. We'd been married 25 years, and not a day went by that I didn't miss her laugh. Why did you come for me today, Henry? How did you even know? He paused, staring out at the lake. I didn't know. Pure coincidence. I happened to drive by and saw your grandson Tyler playing in the yard. I thought about stopping to say hello, but something told me to come back later. When I saw you walking out with that duffel bag and the look on your son's face, I understood everything. He threw me out, I said, my voice flat. My own son. Henry set his cup down, fingers intertwined. Walter, I need to tell you something. But first, there's something I've kept to myself for many years. My heart started racing. His eyes carried both peace and sorrow. Here's a man who'd known me for over 30 years, and I could see he was struggling with whatever he was about to say. I've always respected you, he said quietly. From the day Linda introduced you as her husband, you were 28, wearing that blue work shirt with the Ford logo. Your handshake was firm, honest. I knew she had chosen well. The silence afterward was deep. I could hear my own breathing, the gentle lapping of water against the shore outside. Henry's voice grew softer but steadier. Linda was my business partner, and you were her husband. So I kept my admiration to myself, turned it into friendship, into respect. I married Margaret, had children, built my life around construction. But Walter, he stopped, his voice catching slightly. You've always been someone I looked up to. I didn't know what to say. My mind went blank. Here was this successful businessman telling me, a guy who spent his life turning wrenches, that he looked up to me. Margaret passed away 5 years ago, he continued. I honored my mourning period, waited until I could think clearly, but I never found the courage to reach out to you. We'd see each other at the occasional company barbecue or Christmas party, but I never knew how to bridge that gap. Henry stood, stepped closer, then sat on the chair across from me. A 73-year-old successful contractor, sitting across from a retired factory worker like me, and treating me like I mattered. But today, when I saw you leaving that house with the dignity of a man who built everything with his own hands, I knew I couldn't lose the chance to help. Henry, He gently stopped me. You don't have to say anything. Just know that you're not alone anymore. You'll never be alone again. He squeezed my shoulder, a promise in the form of a touch, then quietly left the room. I sat there staring at the lake beyond the glass, holding a cup of coffee gone cold. For the first time in decades, I felt truly respected, not used, not tolerated, but actually valued by someone who didn't need anything from me. The next morning, Henry knocked on my door early. Put on something nice, he said with a mysterious smile. We have an important appointment. What kind of appointment? Trust me. An hour later, we arrived at his attorney's office, a respectable building in the downtown Bay City. His lawyer, Dr. Oliver Sampson, a tall man with glasses and a firm handshake, greeted me with unusual respect. Mr. Thompson, it's an honor to meet you. Henry pulled out a chair for me and sat beside me. The office was impressive but not pretentious. Law books, diplomas, the smell of leather and old paper. Oliver, go ahead. The lawyer opened a blue folder, took out several papers, and looked directly at me. Mr. Thompson, Mr. Wellington has a proposal for you. He wishes to grant you partnership shares in Wellington Construction Projects. This would provide you with an estimated monthly income of about $12,000, depending on quarterly results. I blinked several times, stunned. I'm sorry. What did you say? Henry smiled. You'll never have to depend on anyone again, not on me, not on an ungrateful son, not on anyone. But Henry, I don't understand. Why would you? Because, he said simply, Linda would have wanted me to take care of you. And because you deserve better than sleeping in a storage room, being treated like hired help by people who should honor you. At that moment, I understood. My life had changed. Completely. Not just the living situation, but everything. I had gone from being a burden to being a partner, from being discarded to being valued. Andrew kept calling. 47 calls turned into 200 over the next few days, but I never answered. Because some doors, once closed, should stay closed, at least until you're ready to open them on your own terms. But what Andrew didn't know was that the limousine that day wasn't the biggest surprise. His real nightmare was only just beginning. The next morning, I woke up in Henry's lakefront home feeling like I was in a different world. It took a few seconds to remember where I was. I opened my eyes to the wood-beamed ceiling, the curtains swaying in the morning breeze. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming, but I wasn't. I sat up slowly, my knees creaking from 45 years of factory work. I stepped onto the deck and looked down at Lake Huron stretching to the horizon. From up here, Michigan looked completely different, cleaner, brighter, peaceful. No longer the gray view from that tiny room in Andrew's house, where all I could see was the neighbor's garage and a chain-link fence. A cold wave washed over me as I stood there. I had ignored too many things over the years, overlooked too many signs, swallowed countless small insults just to keep what I thought was peace. But it wasn't peace, was it? It was surrender. I sat in the wooden chair on the deck and let the memories flood back. 3 years ago, when I'd made the biggest mistake of my life, I had been living alone in my small house on Maple Street, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, paid for with years of overtime at the plant. Every square foot had been earned with sweat and calloused hands. The place where Linda and I raised Andrew, where we'd hosted Christmas dinners and birthday parties, where she'd died in our bedroom holding my hand. Andrew had come over one Saturday afternoon with Stephanie and that charming smile she could turn on like a light switch. Dad, it must be lonely living alone. What if something happens? You're not getting any younger. Age. That word they use like a weapon. I'm fine, son. I have my neighbors, my routines. The garage keeps me busy. Stephanie chimed in, sweet as artificial syrup. Our house is big. The kids love you and will take great care of you. Care. It sounded comforting, but looking back, it was a lie wrapped in kindness. Andrew scratched his head, looking awkward like he used to as a boy when he wanted something. Actually, we're thinking of expanding the auto shop, but we're short on funds. If you sold your house and invested with us, it would be like a family partnership. Family partnership. Those words should have made me happy. Instead, they made me a fool, so I sold it. I sold my house for $220,000 and handed every penny to my son, believing I was investing in his future, in our family's future. 3 years passed, and I never saw a single cent back. Not $1 of return, not even an acknowledgement that the money existed. The memories came layer after layer, loss upon loss. My father's vintage tool collection vanished first. A complete set of Craftsman wrenches from the 1950s, a Precision Torx wrench, and a machinist's caliper set. Not expensive by today's standards, but priceless heirlooms from when he taught me to work with my hands. I had kept them in a locked toolbox in Andrew's garage. Then one day, the box was empty. Maybe you put them somewhere else and forgot, Andrew said, his eyes glued to his phone like always. I didn't forget. I knew exactly where I'd left them. Stephanie stood at the doorway, smiling that fake smile. Father-in-law, honestly, at your age, forgetting things is normal. My grandfather was the same way right before he moved into the nursing home. The nursing home. She had been planting that seed for a long time, watering it with little comments like that. I never saw those tools again. 6 months later, I spotted them in a photo on social media. Stephanie's brother was showing off his new vintage tool collection in his garage. When I asked her about it, she laughed it off. Oh, that's just a coincidence. Tools all look the same, don't they? I didn't react. I didn't make a scene. I swallowed my anger and pretended to believe her because I was afraid. Afraid of losing my son, afraid of being alone, afraid to admit that I had raised a man too weak to defend his own father. But the worst memory, the one that still made my stomach turn, was from a summer night 8 months ago. I had gone downstairs to get a glass of water and heard Stephanie's voice drifting from the living room. She was on the phone with someone, probably her sister. Just a few more months and he'll be in that nursing home. I'll turn his room into my office space. She laughed, actually laughed. No, he suspects nothing. He's so trusting. Still thinks his son respects him. I froze on the staircase, gripping the railing to keep from falling. We've already spent most of the money from selling his house, she continued. But don't worry, once he's gone, we'll refinance this place. Buy something smaller and still have plenty left over. Andrew just does whatever I say. Weak men are easy to control. I went back to my room and stared at the ceiling until dawn. Yet I still did nothing because deep down I kept hoping. Hoping Andrew would realize what was happening, would stand up for his father. Foolish me. The months that followed were pure humiliation. Stephanie treated me like hired help, and Andrew pretended not to notice. Walter, fix the sink. Walter, clean the gutters. Walter, watch Tyler. I need to go out. Never a single please or thank you. Andrew just sat there in his recliner, pretending not to notice while his wife turned his father into unpaid help. You know what really got to me? The way she talked to me in front of the kids, like I was some senile old man who couldn't understand simple instructions. Father-in-law, remember to turn off the water when you're done, she'd say, speaking slowly like I was 5 years old. Meanwhile, I was the one who'd taught Andrew how to fix that same sink when he was 12. One afternoon, my grandson Tyler came home from school with a drawing assignment. Draw your family, the teacher had said. He showed me his artwork proudly. There was Andrew, tall and smiling, Stephanie with her long hair, little Sarah with pigtails, and way over in the corner, barely fitting on the paper, was a small stick figure. "Who's this little guy?" I asked, pointing to the corner figure. "That's you, Grandpa. The teacher said to draw our family, but Mom said you're not really part of it, just staying here for now." His words cut straight through my chest like a dull blade. "And what do you think, buddy?" I asked softly. He smiled that innocent 8-year-old smile. "I think you are family. You teach me cool stuff about cars, and you're the only one who knows how to make pancakes the right way." It was the sweetest and most painful thing I'd ever heard. This kid understood family better than the adults around him. Sitting now on the lakefront deck, I could remember every insult, every dismissal I'd swallowed like bitter medicine. And then I realized something inside me had changed. It wasn't anger or sadness anymore. It was clarity. Crystal clear understanding of what had happened and what needed to happen next. For 3 years, I had accepted scraps of respect, erased myself just to stay, slowly disappearing under the fear of being thrown out. And in the end, they still threw me out anyway. Because to someone like Stephanie, I would never be enough, just a burden to get rid of when convenient. And Andrew, my son, had chosen his side long ago. I had been blind, clinging to the memory of the little boy he once was, refusing to see the weak man he had become. I picked up my phone and turned it back on. 213 missed calls now. The messages kept flooding in like a broken dam. "Dad, please answer. Dad, we need to talk." I didn't mean what I said, didn't mean it, but he said it. He shouted it loud enough for the neighbors to hear. He threw me out like a broken appliance he didn't want to fix. I blocked his number. Every contact attempt, gone. Henry knocked and came in carrying a breakfast tray. Toast, butter, strawberry jam, and a glass of fresh orange juice. Real orange juice, not the concentrate stuff I'd been buying for years to save money. "Sleep well?" he asked. "Better than I have in 3 years," I replied. And it was the absolute truth. He sat down, studying me carefully. "You look different from yesterday." "I'm remembering," I said slowly. "All the times I stayed quiet when I should have spoken up. All the times I let them walk over me because I thought keeping peace was more important than keeping dignity." Henry nodded, his eyes full of understanding. "What do you plan to do now?" I looked at him, then out at the vast lake stretching to the horizon. I had almost forgotten who I was, Henry. Now, I'll do what I should have done long ago. "What's that?" I smiled. Not the smile of resignation this time, but of resolve. I'll remember who I am. And when a man remembers who he truly is, those who once looked down on him will learn a lesson they'll never forget. 2 days later, Henry took me to a large office building in downtown Bay City. Glass facade gleaming, professional security, the air thick with the scent of power and serious money. This wasn't some strip mall law office. This was where real business got done. "Trust me," he said, gently placing his hand on my shoulder as we stepped into the elevator. 12th floor. A polished gold plaque read, "Sampson and Associates, Corporate Law." The kind of place that charged more per hour than I used to make in a week. Attorney Oliver was waiting for us in a spacious conference room, walnut table that probably cost more than my first car, leather chairs, and shelves full of law books that looked more impressive than useful. But what caught my attention wasn't the luxury or the towering shelves. It was the blue folder on the table. On it, written neatly in black ink, was a name that made my heart stop. Linda Thompson. "Mr. Thompson, please have a seat," Oliver said, motioning toward the chair across from him. I sat down, my legs almost giving out. Henry sat beside me, his presence the only thing keeping me grounded in that moment. Oliver opened the folder with the careful precision of a surgeon. A stack of documents, official seals, signatures, legal certificates, the kind of paperwork that changes lives. "Before we begin," he said, looking at me over his glasses, "I need to ask, did you know that your late wife was a co-founder of Wellington Construction?" "I did," I answered. "Linda and Henry started that company together back in the early 80s. Built it from nothing. And did you know that when she passed away, her shares were supposed to be divided among the legal heirs according to her will?" "Yes. My son Andrew told me everything belonged to him. At least that's what he said. That's what I believed for 14 years. Henry and Oliver exchanged a look. The kind of look that precedes devastating truth. The kind that changes everything you thought you knew about your life. "Mr. Thompson," Oliver said, pulling out another folder with deliberate care, "your son lied to you." The world around me seemed to stop. The air conditioning hummed. Traffic moved outside the windows. But in that conference room, time stood still. "What do you mean?" I managed to whisper. "Linda left a notarized will. 40% of Wellington Construction belongs to you, 40% to Andrew, and 20% to the charitable foundation she created for retired auto workers." He pushed a document toward me. Here it is, with the date, signature, and official certification, drafted 3 months before she passed away. My hands trembled as I picked it up. Linda's signature, bold and clear, just like I remembered. And next to it, my name, Walter Thompson, 40%. But Andrew said the lawyer advised that, since I didn't understand business, it was better if everything was under his name. I signed a power of attorney so he could handle everything. "You signed for him to manage it," Oliver corrected firmly, "not to steal it. Those are two very different things under the law. You're still the legal owner of 40% of everything." My head spun. Too much information, too much anger, too much betrayal hitting me all at once. I felt like I was drowning in my own chair. Henry's jaw tightened. I could see the anger building in his eyes. "There's more, Walter," he said. 2 years ago, Andrew sold all of Linda's shares to Morrison Development Group. He forged your signature and kept all the money. My throat tightened until I could barely breathe. "How much?" Oliver glanced at another document, adjusting his glasses. Wellington Construction was valued at about $820,000 when it was sold. Your 40% equals $328,000. Including statutory interest, valuation adjustments, and emotional damages, the total amount owed to you now is approximately $450,000. $450,000. While I was being thrown out of my own house, sleeping in a cramped room, being humiliated every single day, my son had been sitting on nearly $500,000 of my money that Linda had specifically left to me. "I want to sue," I said, my voice steady as a rock. "I want every cent back with interest, penalties, and justice." Oliver smiled, the smile of a lawyer who knows he's about to win a slam-dunk case. "The lawsuit is ready. It just needs your signature." I took the pen and signed 3 copies. Each stroke felt like a declaration of war. Each letter of my name was me finally standing up for myself after 3 years of being treated like garbage. "Andrew will be served within 48 hours, Oliver said, organizing the papers with professional efficiency. "He'll have 15 days to respond, but With this evidence, forged signatures, bank records, original documents, he has no way out. As we left the office, my mind was spinning, but inside my chest was a new feeling. Power. Real power. Not the kind that comes from money, but the kind that comes from finally understanding you're not the victim you thought you were. On the way back to the lake house, Henry stopped at a small diner overlooking the water. We ordered coffee and sat in a booth by the window, watching fishing boats come in with their daily catch. "Walter, are you sure about this?" Henry asked seriously. "Suing your own son won't be easy. He'll fight back. Stephanie will keep poisoning him against you. And your grandkids," I interrupted him. "My grandchildren need to grow up knowing their grandfather wasn't someone to be walked on. That self-respect is not for sale. And that stealing from your own father comes with serious consequences." Henry smiled, pride flickering in his eyes. Now, that's the Walter I remember. That night, I turned off my phone completely. Over 400 missed calls, and I slept the deepest sleep I'd had in years. No guilt, no fear, no regret. Just the peaceful exhaustion of a man who had finally stopped running from his own strength. 2 days later, Henry's landline rang at 7 in the morning. It was Oliver, and I could hear the satisfaction in his voice even from across the room. He's been served. From his reaction, I'd say today is the worst day of your son's life. I hung up and looked out the window. The sun was rising over Lake Huron's horizon, painting the water gold and orange. And me, I was just getting started. Andrew thought he was clever, thought I'd never find out, that the old man was too trusting, too naive to ever discover the truth. But he forgot one thing. I'm the son of a machinist who taught me to check every measurement twice. And when you find a flaw in the system, you don't ignore it. You fix it properly. 3 weeks passed since the court issued the summons. 3 weeks of complete silence from me. 3 weeks in which Andrew probably aged 10 years, lying awake at night, wondering what else I might have discovered. I knew because Henry had hired a private investigator, not out of revenge, but as strategy. In any battle, knowing your opponent is half the victory. And yes, my son had become my opponent the moment he chose greed over family. That Saturday morning, I decided it was time to look him in the eye. Not out of nostalgia, not for reconciliation, but because some conversations must be had face to face. Some truths must be delivered personally. I turned my phone back on after weeks of silence. He picked up on the first ring. "Dad, thank God. We need to talk. This is all a huge misunderstanding. I can explain everything. Murphy's Tavern. Tonight, 8 o'clock. You and Stephanie. Don't be late." I hung up before he could reply. No negotiation, no discussion. Just the time and place where this was going to end. Henry, sitting in his leather recliner with a cup of coffee, chuckled when I told him about the phone call. "You're formidable when you're in control, Walter. I learned from watching you handle business deals all these years," I said, adjusting my collar in the hallway mirror. By 7:30, I was ready. I chose a dark blue button-down shirt, the one I had worn to Linda's funeral, pressed khakis, and clean work boots. My hair was combed back, and for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. Not the broken-down old man shuffling around Andrew's house, but Walter Thompson, the man who'd worked 45 years without missing a day, who'd built a marriage that lasted 25 years, who'd raised a son he thought he could be proud of. When I came downstairs, Henry stood up, genuinely impressed. "Walter, you look like the man who helped build half of southeastern Michigan," I smiled. "Justice is best served with dignity intact." We arrived at Murphy's Tavern at exactly 8 o'clock. The place was a working man's establishment. Wood paneling, framed photos of the old auto plants, neon beer signs, and the kind of atmosphere where honest conversations happened over honest drinks. The kind of place where a handshake still meant something. Andrew and Stephanie were already seated in a corner booth, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else on earth. When they saw me walk in, their faces changed completely. Andrew went pale as winter. Stephanie's eyes widened like she'd seen a ghost. I was no longer the defeated old man in a dirty flannel shirt, hunched over a workbench in his garage. I was myself again. The man they had forgotten existed under all that humiliation. I walked toward them, feeling every eye in the place follow me. Maybe it was my imagination, but I felt respected again, like people could see I wasn't someone to be pushed around anymore. "Dad." Andrew jumped up, trying to hug me. I sidestepped him smoothly and sat down across from them, crossing my arms and signaling the waitress. Coffee, black. Thank you. The tension at that table was thick enough to cut with a knife. Stephanie fidgeted with her napkin like it owed her money. Andrew looked around the room, avoiding my eyes like a guilty teenager. You two look quite comfortable, I said casually, letting my gaze settle on each of them. Stephanie, new dress, isn't it? Looks expensive. And you, Andrew, that's a nice watch, very shiny. Andrew swallowed hard. Dad, about the lawsuit? Oh, the lawsuit? I interrupted, smiling like we were discussing the weather. Yes, we should definitely talk about that. I reached into my jacket, pulled out a manila envelope, and set it in the middle of the table like I was dealing cards. I want you both to see this. Stephanie eyed the envelope like it was a rattlesnake. What's that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Open it and find out. Andrew tore it open with trembling hands. The color drained from his face faster than water down a drain. Inside were copies of forged documents, my falsified signature, and bank statements showing $328,000 transferred into his account 2 years ago. Where did you get this? He whispered. Your mother was a careful woman, Andrew. She kept copies of everything in a safety deposit box. When she died, she left me the key. A small lie, but they didn't need to know that. I just never thought I'd need to use them against my own son. Dad, I can explain. Then go ahead, I said coldly. Explain why you forged your father's signature, why you stole nearly $400,000 from me, why you let me sleep in a storage room while you spent my money on expensive watches and fancy dinners. The waitress brought my coffee. I took a long sip, the bitter taste somehow sweeter than anything I'd tasted in years. Stephanie tried to regain her composure. Father-in-law, we didn't mean... I turned to her, my stare making her lean back in her seat. Be quiet. You have no right to speak to me. You're the one who stole my father's tools, turned me into a handyman in my own house, and planned to throw me into a nursing home so you could turn my room into your personal office. Stephanie went white as paper. How did you... Houses have ears, Stephanie, and you talk way too loud on the phone when you think nobody's listening. Andrew buried his face in his hands. Dad, this is all my fault. Stephanie has nothing to do with it. Good, I said, leaning forward until I could see the fear in his eyes. Then admit it. Admit you stole my money, threw me out of my own house, and screamed at me like I was nothing. Tears rolled down his face, but I felt no pity. None at all. I don't know what happened to you, Andrew. The boy I raised is gone. All that's left is a coward who chose money over his father. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I laughed, a dry, empty laugh that came from somewhere deep inside. You're only sorry because you got caught, because now you'll have to give everything back, every cent with interest and damages. I stood up, grabbed my jacket. You know what's funny? I once sold my house to invest in you, $220,000. And while I lived in that cramped room, you sat on nearly $400,000 of my money. The business was struggling, Dad. I needed the money to keep it afloat. Needed? I raised my voice enough that several people turned to look. Needed it to buy a new truck, to take vacations to Florida, to buy designer clothes while your father fixed your plumbing and slept in a room without windows? The silence in Murphy's Tavern was suffocating. Stephanie's eyes welled up, but they were tears of rage, not remorse. Your lawyer will deal with mine, I said, stepping back from the table. Either you return what belongs to me peacefully, or the court will make you. And trust me, son, it'll hurt a lot more that way. Dad, wait. Andrew's voice cracked behind me. I turned one last time, my hand on the tavern door. One more thing, Andrew. When I die, and it won't be any time soon because now I have a reason to live longer, don't come to my funeral. Don't shed fake tears. Don't pretend to be a devoted son. You had your chance, and you threw it away. I walked out of Murphy's Tavern with my head held high. Henry's driver was waiting outside in the Lincoln Town car. I got in and took a deep breath. Only when we started moving did my body begin to shake, and a single drop rolled down my cheek. Not from sadness, but from relief. Because at last, after all these years, I had said everything that needed saying. But that dinner was only the beginning, because once Stephanie realized she was about to lose everything, her true face emerged. The trap she set afterward nearly destroyed me, and believe me, the worst was yet to come. After that confrontation, I thought I could finally breathe, that the darkest days were behind me, that all that remained was waiting for justice to run its course. I was wrong. A week later, Henry walked into my room with a look I'd never seen on him before, a mix of anger and disgust that made my stomach drop. "Walter, we need to talk." His tone made my blood run cold. That tone never brought good news. He sat on the edge of the bed, holding a brown envelope, avoiding my eyes completely. The investigator I hired to follow up on the case found something. "It's about Stephanie." "What now?" I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. He opened the envelope slowly. Inside were photographs, Stephanie entering a hotel downtown, leaving an upscale apartment complex, and several shots of her with a man who definitely wasn't Andrew. He was younger, well-dressed, the kind of guy who sold expensive real estate to wealthy clients. "Who is he?" I asked, though deep down I already knew this wasn't going to be good. "Carl Mitchell, 34 years old, real estate agent with premier properties downtown," Henry said, flipping through more pictures. "They've been seeing each other for at least 18 months, 2 to 3 times a week, always at the same hotel off Interstate 75. A strange wave of satisfaction rose in me. So, the perfect wife had her own dirty secrets. The woman who'd been pointing fingers at everyone else was living a lie. "Anything else?" I asked. Henry nodded grimly, pulling out several bank statements. "Remember your father's tools, the vintage collection that went missing? They were sold at Morrison's pawn shop downtown. $4,800. The money was transferred into a joint account Stephanie secretly opened with this Carl fellow." I froze. $4,800. My father's vintage tools, passed down through 3 generations, sold to fund her affair. "And this," he said, handing me one last document. "Plane tickets to Miami. Booked last year under the names Stephanie Thompson and Carl Mitchell. A 4-day stay at a beachfront resort, paid for with a credit card tied to Andrew's business account. Everything clicked into place. The so-called girls' weekend she had lied about was actually a romantic getaway with her lover, funded by money that ultimately came from me." "Does Andrew know?" I asked. Henry sighed heavily. "He does. 8 months ago, the investigator found old text messages. Andrew discovered the affair. Stephanie cried, begged for forgiveness, promised to end it, and he accepted her back." Accepted it. I couldn't believe it. "He's afraid of her," Henry said quietly. "Afraid of divorce, of losing the kids, of being alone. So he chose to pretend he didn't know and let it continue." I walked to the window, staring down at the peaceful lake below. My son, the same man who had stolen from me, was too weak to throw out the woman who was betraying him daily. "Give everything to Oliver," I said coldly. "This changes the entire case." Henry frowned. "What do you mean?" "Stephanie manipulated my son, used him to access family assets, sold my father's belongings to fund her affair with another man. That's not just infidelity, that's systematic fraud. I want her in prison." Henry gave a sharp smile. "I'm already arranging that." 2 days later, I rang the bell of the house that used to be mine. Stephanie opened the door, forcing a smile that was pure hatred barely concealed. "What do you want?" "I want to speak privately with my son." She was about to object, but Andrew appeared behind her, thin, hollow-eyed, looking like he'd aged 15 years in the past month. "Let him in, Stephanie." I stepped inside, feeling a wave of unfamiliarity wash over me. Everything was the same, the furniture, the pictures on the walls, the faint scent of air freshener. But this place was no longer my home. It felt like visiting a museum of my former life. Andrew led me into his office and shut the door. We looked at each other in silence. He looked frail, defeated, like a man who'd lost everything that mattered. "I know about Stephanie and Carl," I said bluntly, cutting through any pretense. He froze. His lips parted, then closed again, no words coming out. "I know she's been cheating on you for over a year. I know you found out months ago and said nothing. I know she sold Dad's tools to pay for her romantic trips with him." I stepped closer. "And I know one more thing. You're a coward. Dad, it's not that simple." "It's exactly that simple," I said firmly. "She manipulates you, uses you, betrays you with another man, and you still chose to throw your father out instead of her." Andrew broke down completely, sobbing like a child. "I'm scared, Dad. Scared of losing the kids. Scared of being alone. Scared of living without her. In that moment, I understood everything. My son wasn't just weak. He was trapped in a toxic relationship so deep he couldn't even see he was drowning. Stephanie had hollowed him out systematically, turned him into a puppet dancing to her strings. Part of me felt pity for him, but the larger part, the one that had been most deeply wounded, couldn't forgive what he'd done to me. Andrew, look at me. I placed my hands on his shoulders, forcing him to meet my eyes. You have to choose. Either you wake up and realize she's destroying your life, or you'll lose everything. The money, the children, and your father. He wept harder. I don't want to lose you, Dad. Then do something about it. Prove it, I stepped back. Because if you keep living like this, you've already lost everything that matters. I walked out of that room, knowing it might be the last real conversation I'd ever have with my son. Stephanie was standing in the living room, obviously having overheard everything. I passed her without a glance, but stopped at the front door. "Oh, Stephanie," I said coldly, turning to face her one last time. "I hope you enjoyed those Miami trips, because your next vacation will be in a county jail." Her face drained of color as I walked out, filled with something I hadn't felt in years. Real strength. That night, Attorney Oliver called with news that made my blood run cold. "Walter, we have a serious problem." My heart clenched. "What kind of problem?" "Stephanie just filed for a restraining order against you. She claims you threatened her life in front of witnesses." I froze. "That's impossible." She also requested the court to restrict your contact with the children, saying your presence is psychologically harmful to them. The world crashed around me like a house of cards. She can't do that. She can, and she did. The hearing is scheduled for next week. I dropped the phone, my hands shaking uncontrollably. Stephanie had played the dirtiest card in the deck, and for the first time since leaving that house, I felt genuine fear. Fear of losing Tyler and Sarah forever. Fear of never seeing them again. Fear that the poisonous woman might actually win. But she had forgotten one thing. You never mess with the grandchildren of a man who spent 45 years solving problems with his hands, because every problem has a solution. And what I did next turned everything around. That week was the worst since this whole nightmare began. Worse even than the day I was thrown out. I could endure humiliation, betrayal, financial theft, but being forbidden to see my grandchildren, that crossed a line that should never be crossed. For 3 sleepless nights I sat on the deck, watching the lake, thinking of Tyler and Sarah, their bright smiles. Sarah calling me Grandpa Walter in that sweet little voice. The Saturday afternoons teaching Tyler about car engines. All of it could be stolen from me because of one woman's lies. On the morning of the hearing, I wore my best dark suit, hair neatly combed, looking every bit the composed, dignified man I was. Not the dangerous old man Stephanie was trying to paint me as. Oliver picked me up at 8 in the morning. In the car, he reviewed our strategy. Stay calm, no matter what she says. Don't react to any provocation. Let me handle all the talking. He looked at me seriously. And be ready. Stephanie is going to lie through her teeth. The courthouse was an old building in downtown Bay City, smelling of paper and decades of legal battles. The hallways were narrow and crowded with murmuring lawyers in expensive suits. At the end of the corridor stood Stephanie in a modest knee-length dress, light makeup, hair in a conservative bun. No jewelry, no flashy clothing. She looked like the perfect picture of a concerned mother protecting her children. Andrew stood beside her, head bowed, unable to look at me. The hearing room was small and stuffy. The judge, a woman in her 50s with short gray hair and a stern expression, read the case file in a dry, professional voice. Restraining order hearing. Case number 2024-789-RO. My heart pounded like a jackhammer. Stephanie's lawyer, a heavy man in a rumpled suit, stood up with theatrical confidence. "Your Honor, my client has lived in constant fear since Mr. Thompson threatened her. There is a witness confirming the defendant said, and I quote, 'Your next vacation will be in a county jail.' That constitutes a direct threat." The judge looked at me over her reading glasses. "Do you confirm saying that, Mr. Thompson?" Oliver stood up quickly. "Your Honor, context must be considered here." "I'm asking the defendant," the judge interrupted firmly. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. "Yes, I said it, but it wasn't a threat. It was a legal statement. She sold family assets to fund her affair. That's a crime. Whispers rippled through the courtroom like wildfire. Stephanie's face flushed bright red. "Liar!" she shouted, jumping to her feet. "He's making this up to destroy me. Order!" The judge banged her gavel hard. "Sit down, Mrs. Thompson. Only I ask questions in this courtroom." Stephanie's lawyer continued his performance. "Besides the alleged threat, there's also a serious child welfare concern. The two minors, Tyler, 8 years old, and Sarah, 5 years old, are living in an environment of constant tension. Mr. Thompson visits unannounced, makes accusatory remarks about their mother, causing severe emotional distress to these innocent children. I visited once in an entire month," I burst out, unable to contain myself. The judge raised her hand sternly. "Mr. Thompson, please remain silent unless I ask you a direct question." She turned back to the lawyer. "Continue with your presentation." "Tyler has been having nightmares," he said dramatically, pulling out what appeared to be a school report. He told his teacher that his father and grandfather are constantly fighting, and he's afraid he'll lose both of them. Sarah has started wetting the bed again, something she hadn't done in over 2 years. Therefore, we respectfully request that Mr. Thompson be completely prohibited from contacting these children until this family matter is properly resolved. It felt like my soul was being torn out of my body. No seeing my grandchildren, no hugs, no more Saturday afternoons teaching Tyler about carburetors. No more Sarah climbing onto my lap to hear stories about the old days. Oliver immediately stood up. "Your Honor, this is blatant manipulation. The plaintiff is using the children as weapons to pressure my client in an ongoing multi-million-dollar property dispute. We have evidence that Mrs. Thompson embezzled assets, sold family heirlooms, and used the money for an extramarital affair. That's not within the scope of this hearing," the judge cut him off sharply. "We are only addressing the restraining order. But, Your Honor, it's all interconnected." "I understand your point, counselor." She flipped through the file in silence for what felt like an eternity. Then she spoke quietly. "I grant the petition in part. My world collapsed right there in that courtroom. Mr. Thompson is prohibited from approaching the family residence," the judge declared. I held my breath until she looked up at me and continued. "However, visitation rights with his grandchildren will remain, provided the meetings take place in a neutral location and under supervision once a week for 2 hours. It wasn't the outcome I had hoped for, but at least it wasn't total disaster. Stephanie, on the other hand, wore a triumphant smile like she'd just won the lottery. When I left the courthouse, I was completely drained. Henry was waiting for me outside, and the moment he saw my face, he rushed forward and held me tightly. Right there on the steps of that old courthouse, I broke down in his arms. I cried harder than I had since the day Linda died. I cried for the injustice, for the cruelty, for having to watch my son sit silent in that courtroom while his wife tried to destroy his own father. "She won," I sobbed. "She managed to separate me from my grandchildren." Henry tightened his embrace. "She hasn't won, Walter. This was just one battle. The real war is still ahead." That night, I couldn't eat or speak. I sat on the deck staring into the endless darkness. Henry tried to comfort me, brought me coffee, a warm blanket. But nothing could calm the storm in my chest. Late that evening, he sat beside me and took my hand. "Walter, look at me," he said. I turned to him, my eyes swollen from crying. "That woman doesn't know who she's dealing with," he said firmly. "She underestimates you, thinks you'll give up now. But she forgot one thing." "What's that?" I asked quietly. He smiled. "That you're the strongest man I've ever known. You raised a son while working double shifts, survived losing your wife, and built everything with your own hands. This won't be the thing that breaks you." His words sparked something inside me, a small flame that refused to be extinguished. "Then, what do you want me to do?" Henry stood up, walked into his study, and returned with a thick folder. "I want us to stop defending and start attacking." I opened it, pages of balance sheets, contracts, financial reports. Andrew's auto repair business was hemorrhaging money. Unpaid suppliers, overdue loans, unpaid employees. A complete disaster. Andrew's business is 3 months from bankruptcy, Henry explained. Poor management, reckless spending, trusting the wrong people. In 90 days, he'll owe over $180,000 he doesn't have. I looked up. "How do you know all this?" He smiled grimly. "Because I quietly bought up most of his debts through shell companies. I'm now his biggest creditor. I can make his company collapse anytime I want. It took me a few seconds to process what he just told me. You did this for me. Henry looked at me for a long time. I did it because Andrew deserves consequences, and because now you get to decide his future. The next morning, I woke up with crystal clear purpose. Oliver arrived with the forensic accountant's final report. The numbers were devastating. Stephanie has systematically drained $140,000 from the business over 18 months, Oliver explained. Every trail leads to 3 places: the joint account with her lover, fake vendor payments, and personal expenses disguised as business costs. What about the children? I asked. The child welfare investigator's report shows clear neglect. Missed school days, inadequate supervision, emotional distress from the parents' constant fighting. I had all the ammunition I needed. That afternoon, Oliver drafted the final ultimatum. Andrew had 24 hours to make a choice. The meeting was set for the next day. Andrew arrived alone, looking like a man who'd lost everything, which he had. Dad, I'm ready to listen, he said quietly. I slid the contract across the table. Divorce Stephanie immediately. Enter family therapy with me and the kids. Repay the $450,000 over 10 years, interest-free. In exchange, I'll forgive all your business debts and help you rebuild. And if I refuse? If you refuse, I said calmly, Stephanie goes to prison for fraud. Your business goes bankrupt, and I'll fight for full custody of Tyler and Sarah. Andrew read the contract twice. Then he picked up the pen and signed. 6 months later, I'm sitting on this same deck, watching my grandson Tyler work on a small engine I brought for him to practice on. Sarah is inside helping Henry make pancakes for breakfast. Andrew lives in a modest apartment now, working as a mechanic for someone else's shop. No more pretending to be a big shot. But, you know what? He sleeps well at night. No debts, no lies, no poisonous voice in his ear. Stephanie is serving community service and probation. Her lover disappeared the moment the money dried up. Funny how that works. Every Saturday, the kids visit me here at the lake. Every Tuesday, Andrew and I go to therapy together. We're rebuilding something that was broken for years. Looking back now, I realize that sometimes our greatest losses teach us what really matters. Family isn't perfect, but real love has the power to heal even the deepest wounds. I once thought I'd lost everything, but in that loss, I found what mattered most: self-respect, dignity, and the true meaning of home.